you have a goal of increasing student voice, like meaningful student voice, in 3, 4, 5 years, like that's going to be a core part of your strategic plan. I want to show you a breakdown of how I would suggest doing that over time in a way that's really authentic, particularly if you're in a situation where you're like, student voice is not really happening right now. Like, how do we go from where we are, which is nowhere close to the goal, to really having the authentic, meaningful voice at the end of 3, 5 years, whatever your timeline is. So let's go ahead and dig in. I'm working on, and I just put this on my website, so you'll find the link to that in the description below, a little bit more colorful, and I'm ready to be able to reach out to me if you have questions. But this is actually one of my offerings that I backwards designed from Curriculum Bootcamp. I often talk about Curriculum Bootcamp. I think it's wonderful, but there are many schools that are not ready for it. They just don't have the foundation built. So I had to build the pathway of a foundation to be able to support schools to do this. So year 1, here's what I would do. I would focus on building a community of partnership and a pedagogy of student voice. What do I mean by this? I mean, if you have 4 PD days over the course of a year, those all staff PD days are going to focus on the following 4 things. In the fall, values-based community building and engaging with circles. So that means we literally define, as a staff, I would do this in the actual session so they get the practice and then they can go do it with students. So if you have 2 days in like in August or something and you're about ready to start the school year, these are great to do. Build the values, co-create them, engage with circle protocol. So you have some sort of protocol to house the discussion you're having with staff and students. Then I would do some conflict resolution work, really looking at, I use the acronym BASE needs, belonging, autonomy, survival, and enjoyment, almost forgot for a second, and identifying unmet needs and restorative conversations framework. So what are the questions you'd want to ask if harm is done in the community to repair? And how can we center unmet needs as maybe the core of a conflict versus just kind of like fighting with one another, right? To be able to better restore. And then in the spring, I would focus on other types of class discussion. So amplifying student voice in other ways other than circle. Circle is really good. You could use it academically. You could use it socio-emotionally, you can use it to check in, to talk about current events, whatever. There are others though, right? And so expanding the repertoire of protocols. We might talk about academic circles here, specifically how would you use circle to do academics, but then also introduce Socratic seminar. And then I would also do specifically talking about current events, whole class, small group, and in writing. Now, those are a ton of different protocols that we have to amplify student voice, and we're doing those as full day intensives with staff. So they're co-creating kind of the protocols and templates they would use with students in those full day PDs. As a leader, here's what I would do. I would talk about the things that we need and design systems that you would need as a staff to support teachers to do this work. Teacher success shares, reflecting on implementation. How did it go? What went wrong? What do you need support with? Coaching cycles. So make sure every teacher has a coach, whether that's you, an instructional coach, another administrator, whether that is a peer coaching model, whatever it is, have access to coaching, even if it's asynchronous and not live. Co-create observation or walkthrough look-fors and use the same language and goals as the things that you're actually doing in the PD. So center student voice as something that you're looking for. And then also make sure you co-create school or district expectations for communicating with families. So if you're going to be talking about current events, some people are a little nervous about that. I've talked about that in previous videos. Feel free to go watch them. But I think what you want to do is have a core set of language or expectations and develop a resource bank of templates. So each teacher has access to, if this situation happens, here's the language that we use. Here's what an admin will say. Here's what we encourage you to do beforehand or after something happens as the teacher. Also, make sure that you're diversifying your data collection sources and formats. So make sure we are thinking about historically marginalized students and families and their experiences of class or school more broadly. How do we get their experiential data or street data, as Dugan and Saphir say in their book? Those are the things I'd work on with staff and then as a leader. Year 2 is where we would facilitate student inquiry. So to get really student voicey, we want to make sure students are co-creating the curriculum. How do they do that? Well, they can think about some questions they have and then find the answers or address the answers or adjust those questions with whatever research they find. That means first, we need students to be able to ask the questions. So we might have a couple question generation protocols we develop. We might also need them to work independently. So how do we have independent learner protocols and resources when students are leading the research? This might look like text libraries, organizational templates, source analysis tools. Focus on that in the fall, and you'll have a really good setup for year 2. In the spring, you're kind of refining. So I want to do some case study lessons where I really introduce students to specific topics around their questions of inquiry. So they give me the questions, I find the case studies, and then I bring them to the class. What does that look like? So designing templates for the teachers here. Then from research to action, we want to co-create student-led civic action projects. We have questions, often they're centered in justice or current events. We think about and we research a lot what could be done, but we don't actually take action maybe right away without this kind of intensive. So that's kind of the focus at the end of the spring. What do we literally do to put the solution into action? As a leader, you're working on expanding the structures you put in place last year and refining them. So you might create a shared resource bank where we have sample lessons and student work that teachers are constantly adding to. We might expand our coaching to peer coaching if we don't already have it. Expanding access to surveys and data collection opportunities so students or families who didn't get access last year or had some sort of hiccup or suggested a different method, they can access. We might also expand our shared language for talking to families about student-led civics projects. So this is kind of building on the current event language that we had. What do you do as a teacher before, during, and after the civic action projects? And what are some specific challenging situations that may arise that are specific to civic action projects? And what do we have prepared? Then year 3, we're supporting student-led civics projects. So we're all in on civic action. In the fall, we're talking about strategies for student exploration of self and civic identity. We're helping students pick an issue to address. We're introducing participatory action research and community data collection strategies. So now students are collecting that data in their own communities. And then we're sharing possibilities for action and studying past action strategies and movement strategies. And then we're supporting students to develop an action plan. These are really based off of action civics in the 6 stages. So for example, Massachusetts has this action civics framework that they use and invite people to use for their civic action projects. That's kind of a breakdown of those. As a leader, again, you are refining those systems. You might actually think about community partnerships and creating a hub for everyone to find those as they do these projects. Staff-wide sharing of contacts. I love when staff can share contacts that are, oh, I have this person that's interested in this. If the student is doing this, reach out to them so that each student can have project mentors, even if they extend beyond the school. And then also just whatever you need, right? Refining and expanding those structures of access and support. Take that into a strategic plan. You're going to add a lot more timeline pieces and specific action steps and check-ins along the way. However, I do think this is a really good 3-year arc. And then years 4 and 5, go ahead and do some actual unit building. So build out a full quarter-long unit that culminates in an action civics project and literally do all of the lessons with each department. So that's going to be like year 4 and 5. We're really building out that year-long curriculum with all departments. Let me know if you have questions or additions. I'd love to hear some feedback on this. I cannot wait to hear how you use this in your area.